This content is my summary of Lawrence Gardner View's Real Identity of Miriam. Gardner is a noble Gnostic, so his story can be promoting his ideas. Gardner implies that Moses was not given laws by Yahweh but by Jethro. Miriam was the sister of Moses. An elder sister first appears in the story of the Ark of Rushes, Exodus 2:7, but she is not named at that stage. Much later, Exodus 15:20, we are introduced to a woman called Miriam, who is described as being the sister of Aaron. Then, eventually, Numbers 26:59, it is said that Miriam was the sister of both Moses and Aaron. The Hebrew name Miriam has its equivalent in the Greek form of Maria, Mary, and derived in the first instance from the Egyptian name Mery, meaning beloved. It comes as no surprise to discover in the family records of Akhenaten the names of two princesses called Merykiya, beloved of Aten, one being his daughter and the other his granddaughter. The Mery epithet was also applied to Queen Nefertiti herself, the elder half-sister and wife of Akhenaten. She too was a feeding sister of Smenkari, for her wet nurse was Smenkari's mother Tay of the house of Levi. An inscription at Tay's Amarna tomb describes her as nurse and tutress of the queen. Similarly, with regard to Akhenaten, she is described as being the great nurse, nourisher of the god, adorner of the king. In view of this, Nefertiti was identified some years ago as the possible sister of Moses who appeared at the water's edge when he was a baby. In theory, such a deduction would appear quite logical, but since the story of the Ark of Rushes has a fictional base, the identity of the sister portrayed in this sequence is of little relevance. More important to the ongoing scheme of things is the later Mirriam, who first appears with Moses and Aaron in Sinai. In this regard we find the Mery epithet applied to another half-sister and wife of Akhenaten. This junior queen was called the royal favorite, the child of the living Aten. She was the deputy of Queen Nefertiti, whom she outrivaled in many respects. Better known these days as Queen Kiya, this prominent wife of Akhenaten, Moses, was the greatly beloved Merykiya, daughter of Amenhotep III and his third wife Lilithian. One of the reasons for Kiya's prestige was that, unlike the senior queen, Nefertiti, she bore a son to Akhenaten, and that son was the future pharaoh Tutankhamun. Another reason for Kiya's high status was that her mother, prior to marrying Amenhotep III, was a Mesopotamian princess, being the daughter of King Shuttana of Mittani. The name Kiya derived from the Mittanian goddess Kiba, pronounced Kiya. It was the Jerusalem governor Abda Kiba, servant of Kiba, who appealed for Akhenaten's assistance against invading Hebrews. At that time, the Mittanian dynasty were powerful throughout Palestine, and their Mesopotamian heritage was in the Lilithian kingly line of Ham. So steeped was the family in the Anunnaki lore of Old Sumer, that when Kiya's cousin Taddukiba was also sent to Egypt, her brother King Tushratta of Mittani wrote, "May Shemesh and Ishtar go before her." All records indicate that towards the end of Akhenaten's reign, Merykiya, beloved of Kiba, had become the dominant queen as Mery Amon, beloved of Amon, carrying a dual royal legacy from the kings of Egypt and Mesopotamia. It was she who moved into exile with Akhenaten, Moses, to become known to the Israelites as Miriam, Mery Amon, and it was her matriarchal blood which, through her daughter, the sister of Tutankhamun, cemented the succession for the eventual royal house of Judah. Unfortunately, as a result of the destruction of Amarna records by Pharaoh Horeb, the name of this daughter has been expunged wherever it appeared in Egypt, so for our textual and chart purposes we shall refer to her as Kiya Tasherit, meaning Kiya Jr. Despite the sovereign legacy of Miriam, the Old Testament affords her very little space. She appears only as an ancillary female who led the Israelite women in Sinai with her timbrel, or tambourine, Exodus 15:20. She and Aaron are seen to admonish Moses because of his marriage to an Ethiopian woman, Numbers 12:1, and this appears to relate to Princess Tharbis of Ethiopia, who, as stated in the Antiquities of the Jews, was married to Moses during his early Egyptian military campaign. In practice, the anger of Miriam Mery Amon was actually stirred upon learning of her husband's marriage to Zipporah of Midian. Subsequently, Miriam is said to have died at Kadesh, Numbers 12:10, 20-1, and that is the extent of her portrayal in the Bible. Outside the Bible, however, Miriam's story is told at some length, particularly in the book of Jasher, a work not selected for inclusion in the canonical Old Testament. In person, Jasher was the Egyptian-born son of Caleb. He was brother-in-law to the first Israelite judge Othniel, Judges 1:13, and was the appointed royal staff-bearer to Moses. Consequently, the book does not make the biblical error of first calling Moses' Midianite father-in-law Rule, but calls him Jethro from the outset. The name Jethro, or more correctly Jethro, means abundance. Another difference, which becomes increasingly apparent, is the ultimate significance of Miriam, who is a constant advisor to Moses and Aaron, and is greatly revered by the Israelites, to whom she is clearly a cultural leader. In this we find another reason for the biblical exclusion of the book of Jasher, for it is quite unlike the familiar books in its portrayal of a woman who issues instructions that are generally obeyed by all who take counsel from her. Indeed, the reader is left in little doubt of Miriam's extreme royal heritage. The main contrast between the Exodus and Jasher accounts begins at the moment when God issues his diverse laws and ordinances to Moses at Mount Horeb. These are the commonly known laws which follow the decree of the Ten Commandments, about which Jasher makes no separate mention. Exodus 21:1, 36, explains that Jehovah issued instructions to Moses concerning masters and servants, covetousness, neighborly behavior, crime, marriage, morality, and many other issues, including the all-important rule of the Sabbath. But, in Jasher, these laws and ordinances are not conveyed to Moses by Jehovah, they are directly communicated by Jethro, Lord of Midian, at the foot of Mount Horeb. At this point, Jasher explains that Miriam took up the challenge, asking why the old ways were to be abandoned in favor of the laws of a foreign nation. Shall Jethro instruct the Hebrews? She cried. Are the children of Jacob without understanding? She then reminded Moses about the age-old Egyptian traditions of the Israelites, which he was seeking to forsake for the customs of Midian. But in all this there is no talk whatever of Jehovah, only of the Lord Jethro. Contrary again to the Exodus portrayal of the Israelites' allegiance to Moses, Jasher then relates that the voice of the tribes of the congregation were on the side of Miriam. Moses became so angry that he had Miriam imprisoned, and the people of Israel gathered themselves together unto Moses and said, Bring forth unto us Miriam our counselor, whereupon Moses was compelled to release her after 7 days. Clearly, Miriam Mery Amon was far more popular than her paternal brother Moses, Akhenaten the Mose, and the book of Jasher makes much of her standing, while detailing the Israelites' great sorrow when she died in Kadesh.